This is Rangercast Episode 5, SPD Retrospective. Alright, this is Rangercast. I'm Tyler, better known as Vito Volto, and I am joined by Lamar.
Hey everyone, happy to be here.
And Tori.
Hey everybody.
Alright, let's get down to it. Right after we recorded last episode, we learned of an upcoming news dump. We got Hasbro PulseCon having an online panel, as they've been doing online, not in person. PulseCon, I don't think there has been in-person PulseCon. September 30th, promising, according to a social post, quote, exclusive content, news, reveals, and some more phenomenal guests. Now, they're not saying, Entertainment One, they're not using some of the, words that would definitely explicitly indicate that we're going to get show news. But the implication is we're going to get show news. What are y'all hoping for?
For me, I'm really hoping for more information about the Lightning Collection. There's been a lot of stuff that's been announced, but none of it's actually been kind of coming overseas yet. So something along those lines, especially when it comes to the Lightning Collection Silver Ranger from In Space, just because that one has been super hard to track down. Additionally, some more one-shots for the Power Rangers comics would be great, because there are so many different stories we'd like to see continuations for.
Yeah, we're going to get to some comic stuff later. How about you, Tori? What do you want to hear from Hasbro?
Yeah, if it's mostly in the line of toys, I guess I'd like to hear more about like the upcoming Zords, beyond the Dragon Zord, if they'll maybe be announcing like a Titanus or anything like that. Yeah, new Lightning Collection figures. Really, I'm not sure what else I can expect from Hasbro at this point.
Yeah, the Zord Ascension project line has a lot of promise. I think the problem with a lot of the Bandai stuff is it hasn't yet met that that heft you'd expect from the old. I think we talked about this before, the diecast heft of the old Bandai legacy products. So I'm looking forward to see if we get any toy announcements. But I think there might be some corporate politics involved in why we didn't get the suits at Power Morphicon. And I think kind of we were going back and forth in our reactions to that announcement. Why wouldn't they have the suits at Power Morphicon if they were just suits from Japan? But we're kind of getting spitballing and conjecture, and we'll know what we know when we get to know it.
Yeah, for sure. It's possible that the actual season they'll be adapting is still in flux and to be determined, and that's why. That's the only legitimate reason
I'm not sure, because a while back the stunt team Instagrammed and deleted a story post about them working on the morph sequence for next season. So whatever like they were like sketching it out, what have you. So whatever is in the plans has been in the plans for a while.
Oh, true. They can definitely have the plans and the general outline, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to exactly match with the footage. If you think about it, like the morphing sequences for Lost Galaxy don't really match the Sentai. Really, nothing with Lost Galaxy matches the Sentai. They just had a general idea.
Right, that's true. But like the general like aesthetic, like you couldn't do regardless of what the tone of the actual season is, you couldn't do the same kind of morph sequence for the Ryu soldier suits compared to the ninja suits. But then again, the morph sequence, they tossed the Ryu soldier morph sequence out the window. So what do we know?
Do we think it's possible at all that since they've been so coy about what the next season they're going to be adapting is, despite giving us a general theme, could this be the transition to original footage?
We literally don't know. We don't know what, if any, arrangement has been made with Toy as to this new season. It could be a Due 2 situation, for all we know, or it could be, weird kind of season 3 situation where they're still using the Zord footage. I don't want to jump the gun too much, but anything can happen. I think that if it weren't a Toy thing, if it weren't working with Toei, you wouldn't see the Ryusoulger insignia in the logo. I mean, that's what I think, but what do I know about, the current state of the contracts and all that?
Right, and also contract or copyright law is a really tricky thing, especially when it comes to adaptations.
Right. But it's like, there's a whole lot of mystery around exactly, what the plan is for Cosmic Fury beyond, we know who's writing it, we know who's in it, and we know the name, we've seen a logo, we heard a bit of theme, or at least what is the theme. Everything could be change it, we don't know. But anything ultimately is possible. Now, speaking of the Sun Team's Instagram, according to their most recent story from them, they are back at it down in Auckland. The cast is not there yet, but they're back at it. I'm not sure when principal photography is going to start.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really it's a ball in the air type situation. I don't know if they're really under any sort of specific guidelines due to the move to Netflix. It's possible that with the state of the franchise being in such flux, with the move to Netflix and with the Cosmic Fury announcement, and also with the One Entertainment, confusions, they could just be laying the groundworks that way. When all the ink dries, then they're going to be able to hit the ground running.
Okay, so moving on to comics news, the Death Ranger one shot is getting a second printing. I've not read it. In fact, I didn't know it existed. I've been kind of not great, but but it was a part of one shot in Power Rangers Unlimited. The new printing will be available October 5th with new cover art by Dan Mora. For those who also don't remember it, the one shot was written by Paul Allor, who also wrote Psychopath, along with artist Kath Lobo and Anna Chandra. Anna Chandra also did the art for Countdown to Ruin #1. And the couple of the colorists have also worked on Power Rangers. So, for those who also forget what it was about, that one shot was about a mysterious and deadly ranger whose unearthly secret might spell doom for everyone in the morphing grid. So that is coming back to retailers on October 5th. And in other comics news, we got the first look from Boom Studios of the Megazord Pack collection, which is a compilation of key issues from the comics, going back to the first appearance of Draken, Shattered Grid, Ranger Slayer. All 5 include new variant covers by Kayla Valerio that are exclusive to this set. She also worked on that one shot about Death Ranger. So the pack includes Mighty Morphin #1, Mighty Morphin #9, I should probably restate that. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #1, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #9, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #25, Go-Go #1, and Go-Go #8. So that hits September 21st, this week's New Comic Book Day, as we record this. And the other, not really news, but more of a reminder, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #100, the special oversized celebratory issue, drops the 28th. So that's going to be a heck of a week for Power Rangers. You got 100 on the 28th. You got the backstretch of Dino Fury on the 29th. You got Hasbro PulseCon on the 30th. We are going to be eating well, folks.
Oh, for sure. And it's so inspiring to see that there's investment in the franchise and that they're really not going to let it die.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. And you
Yeah.
hope that Boom gets to keep the license.
Well, for sure. I
I
mean,
mean,
I
obviously
think,
you are. You obviously are.
I mean, what Boom has been doing with the franchise is clearly their best work at non under 10s demographic that we've gotten really ever in Power Rangers. So it's definitely something that if they want the franchise to continue, they need to keep it going with Boom.
Yeah, and I mean, they just hired Melissa Flores, so they're not going anywhere.
Yeah. I'm sad to say I'm a little behind on the storylines on the comics just because the Death Ranger issue was kind of delayed coming to my store. Like it only just came in this week. But otherwise, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how they're kind of capping things with this run, issue 100 here. I will admit I'm a little confused though about this upcoming Megazord pack. One, I think the title is a little weird because I don't feel like the
Yeah.
issues they've highlighted are like Megazord focused necessarily.
Well, no, it's like a,
comic,
think of it like think of it like a greatest hits.
Yeah. I mean, I also see what Tori is saying because Megazord pack also, like, at first I was thinking, oh,
Yeah.
they're making, like, figures of Megazords.
Yeah. Well, what would be a better name for the greatest hits collection of the comics?
I mean, Greatest Hits itself isn't bad, and I forget what they called that the Ranger DVD they had released around Wild Force that was just like
That's the Power
highlights.
Rangers, the Ultimate
But,
Rangers.
okay, the one that was like, yeah, highlights of the first 10 seasons or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Megazord focus. There's plenty of names.
Yeah. Yeah.
And heck, even just like a variant collection, collector's edition, anything like that. And since like it seems like that's really the selling point with these is the pretty awesome new cover art.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, completionists out there are definitely going to get it, but also, people who want to, see some of those moments like the first appearance of Draken and all that, because those are pretty pivotal moments in the history of Power Rangers comics and arguably in the history of Power Rangers, even if they've never actually been in the show. It's more of a showcase of what the comics can do.
No, definitely. The comics have been doing so much in bringing in their own lore as well. It's almost its own thing separate from the shows now.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, all this is happening around the time issue 100 is coming out, and I think that it's probably a good time for them to dig those issues out of the stacks and show them people who might have missed them because these comics been going on a few years now. It's easy to for especially newer arrivals to the series to miss some of these things.
Especially, I know for me, I tend towards digital, so there's really nothing out on the Kindle edition of a comic. However, Tori was saying that Tori collects a lot of the physical copies, right?
Yeah, I have every physical copy first printing so far. I don't really collect variant covers, but yeah, I've been kind of a completionist in that regard.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so moving on, we don't usually talk a lot of actor news because a lot of these actors are working actors or they're not working actors. If they're not working actors, we definitely don't talk about them. Uh, but if it's unusual, we'll talk about it. And here's something unusual: Karen Ashley, I don't think has done a lot of anime. She's randomly popping up in the anime The Slime Diaries, which I believe is going to be on Toonami, or is on Toonami, I should say. Uh, so that's cool, but also kind of follows Campbell Cooley. Like one of it's random, like he lives in Auckland, but also kind of randomly pops into the U.S. and does some anime. He recently booked a part in the Fruit of Evolution. I'm not sure if that's aired. I don't keep track of that. But also in really unusual acting news, Johnny Bosch wasn't at PMC, not just because he had gotten in a car wreck about a week or so prior, and we hope he's doing well, but he's also been canceling other cons because he's been filming at Arkansas, he said this week on social, with Harvey Keitel and Dolph Lundgren. Good for him. I know he hasn't done, a lot of on camera, so he's pivoting more to anime, but he's done a little bit. But that's a hell of a thing. Good for him. I don't know anything about the movie.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear this for both of them. I think it's kind of funny, given their season in particular, that Karen Ashley is now the one moving toward anime, and now we have Johnny in more live action work. I've always been surprised more Rangers didn't take off in like the voice acting and anime circles. I think Johnny Young Bosch is an amazing voice actor. I was just surprised they never found that talent apparently among the others.
Yeah.
And I think they certainly had potential, a lot of the other cast members.
Yeah, I think the big thing that Johnny has on screen is charisma. But, he, voice acting, it's a living. That's one way to use that charisma. But it's like you look at him in Once a Ranger, and he's as Power Rangers goes, a commanding presence.
I mean, all the ADR work they're doing whenever, they're filming over the suit products, that's exactly voice acting. So you think that with the amount of experience they got, and especially for the Zordon era folks who have more than one season under their belts, each one of them have at least enough experience to kind of book them some more gigs. So it's good to see, honestly, for both of them. Really, my wife and I, we try and look out for any former Ranger and give them a little bump if we can. We just finished season 1 of Ghosts, starring Rose McIver, and that was fantastic.
Yeah, and Aaron Cahill. There's a thread on the Power Rangers subreddit, asking, if there are any Power Rangers alumni who are legitimately famous. I mean, you could cheat and say Bryan Cranston, but there are others who are. I think the qualifier they put is besides RPM, because you have multiple people from that season who went on to do big things. But it's the gimme is Bryan Cranston. But you have other people like Aaron Cahill who make a real good living, doing the things they do.
I know, absolutely. RPM definitely seems like that's the season. And also Time Force. Those are the two big seasons where they really invested in their actors, and honestly, I think it shows.
Yeah, well, also Time Force, you had the benefit of two people in the cast who, were already big deals. In the late Edward Lawrence Albert, and of course Vernon Wells, they didn't just treat it like a paycheck. The effort was clear in their performance. They weren't phoning it in.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Vernon Wells clearly is mostly a Mad Max guy, but he doesn't seem to be shying away from or pretending like he was never in Power Rangers. And he even came back for the Water Force crossover, which my wife and I are watching now for our workout show.
Yeah, I mean, he's a massive ham, and he won't turn down an opportunity to be a massive ham. I mean, this guy worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Got to be a ham for that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Here's a word from some friends of the show.
So you want to hear people talk about Japanese cartoons?
Anime.
But you think the other anime podcasters just aren't nerdy enough?
Sounds like you need to join forces with the Anime World Order,
where each week 3 self-proclaimed experts offer you reviews
of titles both new and classic, news and commentary,
rants, convention reports, interviews with fandom,
and some hentai and yaoi for good measure.
So search for anime in the iTunes Music Store,
or visit our website at animeworldorder.com.
Anime World Order, revealing the truth about anime, one podcast at a time.
And we are back, and time for some token news. So, now the big news out of Toronto International Film Festival, besides all the Don't Worry Darling drama and everybody, appreciating Brendan Fraser, which is great. The other stuff happening behind the scenes at Toronto International Film Festival is Shin Ultraman is being shopped. A company called The Exchange acquired the Western sales rights, that is North America, Europe, maybe Western probably isn't the right word. It's kind of colonialist. North America, Europe, Latin America, Australia, New Zealand, and other remaining territories for Shin Ultraman, which made a whole bunch of money in Japan in May, and the exchange is trying to sell it up in Toronto. So the movie in Japan grossed $31.2 million. It was directed by Shinji Higuchi, who directed The Floating Castle and Attack on Titan, and was written by a name that's a little more familiar to American fans, Hideaki Anno, who made Shin Godzilla, and of course is best known for Neon Genesis Evangelion. I believe he's also making Shin Kamen Rider as well. And Anno was also a producer on the project. The movie stars Hidetoshi Nishijima, who was in the Academy Award-winning movie Drive My Car. There are also some other actors who people more into Japanese actors might know. So the movie, I'm reading from Variety here. The appearance of kaiju to become commonplace in Japan, like it wasn't already. Conventional weapons have no effect on them. We knew that. So the Japanese government issues the S-Class Species Suppression Protocol and formed an enforcement unit. And this team of scientists, physicists, and special agents copes with the ongoing threat of S-Class species until a silver giant appears from beyond Earth's atmosphere. And what else do you call it but Ultraman? So I'm really excited to see, what happens with this movie. Like, what kind of, does it go theatrical at all? Like maybe a Fathom event sort of thing. But I just think it's great to see Ultraman potentially getting this kind of attention in the West. Continuing on from the anime and all that.
Yeah, I'm really hoping this at least makes it to the major theater chains. Like, I don't feel like I saw Shin Godzilla get a ton of buzz around me, but that could just be Iowa. But yeah, like I'm really hoping I can use this as a springboard to getting at least my Godzilla fan friends into more Toku. Just since like if I can sell them on Shin Godzilla, since that's like kind of the perfect Godzilla movie, hopefully I can have them make that leap to Shin Ultraman, maybe Shin Kamen Rider a year after that, and have them start digging into some of the better Toku they have out there.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's primarily more Godzilla fan than the rest of those franchises, this is actually something that I'd be interested in looking into. My wife and I loved Shin Godzilla, the more serious take on it and the more realistic take on it. So I'd be interested to see what they do with an Ultraman or with a Kamen Rider. And maybe someday, hopefully, they'll do a Shin Super Sentai.
Yeah, yeah. So the other news coming out of the Toku world, kind of not at a TIFF, but it's going to premiere at another festival called Fantastic Fest. It's an American movie, really an indie movie called Ike Boys. It's about a couple of friends obsessed with Japanese culture who themselves become superheroes and have to fight giant monsters to save the city on New Year's Eve. So, it's all kind of like no-name actors, cheesy special effects, but it seems like it's got a lot of heart. Have you guys have seen the trailer, right?
Yeah, I've been sharing that trailer around just because like
Yeah.
I saw that and it's not often that I watch a trailer and think, "Oh my gosh, someone made this movie specifically for me." And
Yeah.
yeah, like I think it looks incredible. I think it's using like a lot of those things we love about Toku, like kind of supplementing the cheesy special effects with some really high quality animation to like just give that movie more of a visual pop to it. So yeah, just kind of using both cheap effects and then more expensive techniques that are more traditional to Japan to make the best kind of Toku project.
Yeah, and this is I take back what I said about No Names. I forgot that Billy Zane is in it, which is cool. So it's going to be an official selection of Fantastic Fest, and it has its world premiere on September 26th. So I'm really really excited to see what happens with that. And a little blurb here in the end of our Token News segment. Kamen Rider Kuga Blu-rays are arriving. If you pre-ordered it through Shout, you are also getting a poster. Mine arrived late last week. I haven't gotten to watching it because I've been traveling. I've been busy, but so that's coming out, and 5-man DVDs are here, and Abba Ranger. I forgot to mention Abba Ranger when I was putting together this rundown. That is a Sentai series that is close to my heart, and I cannot wait. I still actually know exactly where to find it. The Hong Kong set of poorly subtitled episodes, like the first batch of episodes of Abba Ranger. That was the first Sentai I ever watched, and I cannot wait. And I am just I mean I'm stoked. I think somebody mentioned when I tweeted from the Rangercast account that it sounded like I personally wrote that tweet because I am personally that excited.
Yeah, no, definitely. Shout Factory has been doing a lot more of those. Oh gosh, the Super Sentais and bringing it over to America. Now, one day I'd love it if they were able to get like the Power Rangers cast to voice over like any dubbing for the Super Sentai. I thought that would be a neat little crossover. But yeah, no, it's great that more of the stuff that we're familiar with, but we don't know the story behind it, is becoming more available.
Yeah, and I think Abba Ranger. I feel like there's a lot of love for Abba Ranger in the fandom. Especially since that's the one that, in a weird way, Power Rangers fans have a fair bit of exposure to because there was a monster from a really unadaptable episode, and what they ended up doing was the episode Lost and Found in Translation, and that was just bonkers. There were even more bonkers stuff they could not use in the episode, and I remember watching the episode, like, just my mind was being blown by the stuff that the absolute madcap stuff that Abba Ranger was doing, and it's it's even more zany than Sentai sometimes is today. Um, but I think there's a lot of love for Abba Ranger out there, and it is really kind of a milestone Sentai. And then you have Deca Ranger, which might, I guess, given the pattern, maybe it'll be the set released after the next one. But it's great that that Shout is picking up right where they left off.
Yeah, and I wanted to circle back to the Kamen Rider Kuga Blu-ray release coming
Mhm.
out. While I have to confess, I'm not a huge Kuga fan. Like, I've tried to watch it, and like I sampled just a lot of Kamen Rider from over the years to see what was good. And Kuga's just kind of got that typical episodic Toku flair we expect, but like jumping from uh, old Heisei stuff to I'm totally forgetting my eras here. Can I get a reminder?
Showa, Heisei, Reiwa.
Yeah, right. So yeah, comparing it to some of the stuff from the Showa era that was like much more practical effect focused to jumping over to Kuga, where it's like, yeah, we have these terrible computer effects and they're gonna be front and center, and no, we're not gonna put them in the shadows to try and make them look less awful. But like, my personal distaste for Kuga aside, I'm pretty excited for this because the Kuga manga is also going to be getting an American adaptation. I believe that's what's being released, not a new comic like what Zero One is getting. But like, anytime I see something like this that's getting some seeds planted in the US of like, okay, this isn't where Kamen Rider Kuga is now going to hit the masses, but this gives just that wing of the fandom away that like, okay, this is your thing. You can, like, now here's Kuga for you. Here's the show in America. Here's a comic that's like giving you the kind of darker, more palatable manga adaptation. So people don't have to just rely on terrible fan subs and fan translations anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I think like Power Rangers fans at the end of the month, I think Toku fans are eating well right now, especially now that we're getting the manga and stuff over here and the comics that we talked about an episode or two ago.
But since you mentioned Deca Ranger just a second ago, do we want to move on to our discussion of the week?
I think we do. So, uh, in our internal Discord, we talk about potential topics. For one, it's a dry week, and we don't have any new episodes to discuss. And it's a dry week, and we don't have any new episodes to discuss. So we decided that we're going to do some appreciation of SPD, which remains. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised at Power MorphCon to see how crowded the SPD panel was, not just on stage, because you had like 50 people up there, but also the audience still love this series. And it did a lot of things that were unique for the show at the time, and some of the influence hung around long after uh, the EP responsible for its production design was gone. And I feel like, just even though a show like SPD probably wouldn't be made today, because of the way that society has changed, I think that it's a show that has aged really well. On the strength of its story, on the strength of its practical effects, and I think time to reflect. Lamar, what were your favorite moments about SPD?
So SPD, for starters, had an absolutely stellar cast. Nobody was in there who didn't seem like they belonged. This was the start for some of the bigger names in the franchise. Obviously, first among them, John Toohey, and then also Kelson Henderson. They did an amazing job with the set work and the costuming, which they don't always put that much effort into. So I was pleasantly surprised to see it. My wife, who's a cosplayer, is like, "Ooh, I'd love to make those SPD uniforms at some point." Um, the Ranger suits themselves, maybe not so great, especially the A Squad paintball uniforms. Some of the story beats felt a little bit more contrived. I absolutely understand not wanting Jack to be the leader, or not wanting Sky to be the leader. Jack seemed just as irresponsible as Sky, so maybe Z might have been a better call as Red Ranger, but I also understand they want to try and match the footage. Let's see here. What else?
I think arguably that did match the footage, though, because
Uh,
Hoji was always the one with the stick up his butt.
okay. Yeah, I'm completely unfamiliar with the Sentai adaptations to it, so um, but yeah, no, they did some really good work. The the headpiece for Anubis Kruger was so much better than the Japanese version that I've seen, which just looks like it was made out of paper mache in a couple hours,
It looked like
as
a Muppet.
opposed to
Yeah.
a yeah. Um, it definitely some really interesting story beats. The end part, spoilers for a 20-year-old season,
Oh, go
but
ahead.
the end parts with that giant, what was it, the one thing, the eyeball monster creature, that just felt like it completely undercut all the emotional drama that had been building between, the main antagonist and Kruger. But hey, it is what it is. I get that sometimes they just want to end things with a big bang rather than a more emotional, tight battle, even though that's technically what they did do after they did the big battle.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, especially now we've gotten a bit of a look behind the curtain at panels over the years. I really have a new appreciation for how much of the show resulted from a battle um between the showrunners, especially Greg, and Disney higher ups, or between the showrunners and Disney standards and practices. Like there were, like, they had to, like, there were so many old monster suits and costumes and mooks reused to fill out the world of SPD, and stretch that dollar. And I think it worked because you felt like New Tech City could be a real place. Um, and it was fun also for fans to spot these Easter eggs, these parts of costumes from seasons past. And it was amazing that some of those costumes and parts still existed, given the auction that took place a couple years prior, and the fact that production had moved to New Zealand. You wouldn't think that this stuff would even be saved from like Time Force.
Yeah, I'll always remember SPD as kind of my swan song with Power Rangers for a number of years, since like I was exposed to Mighty Morphin at literally the age of 1, and I was born in '93, so I kind of aged with the Power Rangers. And yeah, like once Disney took over with Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder, like we kind of started to see them grow with the audience once again, like on the Power Trip podcast. They talk about how Rangers has this tendency to grow with its audience, but there's usually that reset every time it changes hands. Like Ninja Storm is a bit more young focused than some of the like Time Force or something. But like I feel like SPD was just that natural progression and that return to a more traditional team after like the smaller starting teams in Dino Thunder and Ninja Storm. And yeah, as you've mentioned, like the setting of SPD is just really incredible. Like it has everything you want in a Power Rangers season, like a good, unique premise for the Rangers themselves, an interesting world, cool supporting characters. Like it just feels like there's so much you can see in this season that you won't see in other seasons. And so like I felt like it was a pretty good one to go out on as a kid. Like I got the toys, realized I was kind of getting too old for Power Rangers, and let this be the last one.
I think it's clear, despite the fact that, like, I think, in Decca, Muppet Kruger totally worked. For the aesthetic they were going for, everything, it worked. And Greg is talking about how he loved the idea, but didn't like the design. So he worked to keep the silhouette, but, fleshed it out a bit more and made it look more like something he would do. And I think it's, I think so much is craftsmanship, and not maybe not necessarily animatronics, but his art style seemed to leave its mark on the people he worked with. And you go forward a year, to like Phineas, for example, or Flurious, and these characters that he didn't work on, but had prosthetics and what have you that are more like things that Greg would make.
Yeah, no, for sure. The level of effort in the craftsmanship, I'd say, also bears noting, just because for a lot of these shows, you could definitely tell when they were like, you know what, we're just trying to sell toys, put in $5 worth of effort, and call it a day. They didn't do that this season, and I think that's one of the reasons why SPD is stuck as a fan favorite and why SPD figured so prominently in the Shattered Grid crisis in the comics.
Yeah, yeah, and Doggy was. It was great to see Doggy again, even if only in comics. And that's a character that people still have a lot of affection for.
Yeah, I actually just really got to blow one of my friends away, since that Shadow Ranger was his favorite Ranger growing up. So as his moving gift, as he got more room to display action figures, finally, that was I managed to track down that SPD or the Shadow figure Lightning collection figure. And like it's fun seeing that, like, that is the season that when people come to my place and see Rangers all around, they're like, oh yeah, I remember watching SPD growing up. Like it gets a lot of random mentions from like even casual fans.
Yeah, and that Doggy Kruger figure is nice. Like, I think when Hasbro went to Doggy Kruger early in the life of the Lightning collection, I'm like, wow, that's a big swing, because trying to get the head right, but they got the head right. They haven't always gotten the head right. There have been a couple of the SPD Rangers, like Bridge, for example, where the head is nowhere near. But it's always a bit of crapshoot. But I think it was when I saw Doggy's head that I realized they were trying to do this as seriously as possible.
Yeah, no, and I'd say honestly it worked. They still had their comic relief with Boom and obviously with Bridge to the greatest extent, but they also still have their serious moments. Kruger's story definitely was more on the serious side. Sky's backstory and his relationship with Jack, I'd say, also was one of the more serious notes, and just kind of seeing these characters change and develop because I mean, not every season. Rangers don't develop every season.
Yeah,
So seeing multiple Rangers develop in a season is actually quite encouraging.
yeah. When Disney told them they couldn't afford an actor for Omega, uh, they grafted a lot of Deca Break's backstory onto Sky, and the result is because they grafted Tetsu's backstory onto him, uh, he got a lot like Sky got a lot of focus episodes, whereas I think Sid maybe got one or two, Z only got a couple. I think the Sam two-parter being the most notable. Um, but Chris Villette is such a strong actor. He made a two-parter like reflection you work out fantastically.
Yeah, no, definitely. And there are definitely some Blue Rangers who, had they had this amount of focus, would not have been able to handle it as well. The Red Ranger, generally, you want to be the best actor in the season just because, they're going to be getting a lot of the focus episodes. And some, of the non-Red Rangers don't really get much of any focus, especially in a team the size of what it was, like 7 or 8 Rangers, 9 if we count Nova. Um, so yeah, having somebody who can, who's not the lead, but who can handle these more expansive episodes, that's definitely a mark in favor of the casting department on that one.
Yeah, and talk about Nova. One of the things Power Rangers was up against, I guess not so much anymore because the way that timetables have shifted is Toy they get the tapes when they get the tapes, and they didn't know about Nova, um, about Deca Bright until like the last batch of tapes, and they'd already written the finale, and we're like, well, dang, I guess we have to stuff her in there, and she's only there for like two scenes, and that's it because that's all we could really do with her. Um, and the fights with Disney. Greg was talking about one of them, well, more than one of them, at Power Morphicon, where he was adamant that the Rangers, be part of be cadets rather than fully formed Rangers, because that gives them somewhere to grow, somewhere to aspire, something to aspire to, rather than knowing everything out the jump, because kids can't relate to that. It's more relatable if you have them, learning, making mistakes, breaking stuff.
I mean, hell,
Uh,
even adults
yeah,
can't really relate to that. I say,
right.
as a fully grown adult, I don't have all the answers.
That's right. Like the academy wasn't really a concept in Deca Ranger, but it was built into SPD, the concept of them training while also defending the city. A fight he lost, however, and it's kind of jokes about having lost it, uh, was with the team up, or team ups, where in history he thought that the Dino Gems could and would be used to make clones of the Core 3 Dino Thunder Rangers, rather than bring them through time. And Disney said, "Oh, kids won't understand clones." 5 minutes later, Star Wars Clone Wars cartoon hits, and all the kids know what a clone is.
Yeah, wasn't it actually Attack of the Clones was 2002 and SPD was 2005, so I mean that even further establishes that like they should absolutely know.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean Disney knows they know.
Hmm.
Or the people the people who live under a rock who make these decisions. But I think there are things that back that contemporary that around the time the show was airing that we clowned on that have kind of faded into the mirror into the rearview mirror, and things that I think are really worth appreciating about SPD, like oddly enough the way that it knew when and when not to pull directly from the Sentai. I think if you ask somebody, what their favorite episode of SPD is, it's possible they're going to answer Idol, which is practically scene for scene a remake of a Deca Ranger episode, and it works perfectly.
Absolutely, and even with characters which I assume are relatively different from their Japanese counterparts.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like the backstory for that given for the counterpart to Drew in that episode. All that the relationship. I think the assassination attempt, if memory serves, like all that is practically pulled directly from Deca Ranger, and it still works perfectly. Whereas there are aspects of Deca Ranger that would not work at all in SPD, like Umiko Deca Pink's bubble baths. But it's like being judicious in what you pull and how, and I think that's something that later seasons, particularly Samurai, didn't quite understand how and when to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, Samurai was also a rush job. SPD does not give that impression at all.
Yeah, yeah. Though again, they were kind of like being produced almost in parallel to Deca, so they did have kind of a rough task before them. So like they introduced Grum, not totally knowing if Deca Ranger would give them a lead villain, and turned out that really Deca Ranger was just a progression of Mercs.
Yeah, wasn't the main villain in the Japanese footage the bat
Yes,
arms dealer?
Agent Aburera, but he wasn't really like he was like he was just like he was hiring these people, but not like he wasn't really some kind of overarching threat. He's like the equivalent of kind of like a mob boss kind of. It's been a while since I've watched Deca, but it didn't have an equivalent to Grum. And it also gave them some places to drop hints for things like Icenia, for the Magnificence. I think Idol is the first place where we hear the Magnificence referred to by name, but don't really know that it's something being referred to by name.
I'm not remembering. The Magnificence was. Oh, I'm
Omni.
sorry. Yes, that was the. Yep, that was the big thing at the end.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, but that was Omni, who was puppeteering Grum essentially the whole time. But Icenia, another battle with Disney was they weren't able to afford Icenia, so Greg spent Christmas break building her. That's why her mouth didn't move so much. Yeah. But I think, especially as we near, 2025, there are no aliens in the Power Rangers universe yet. Well, there aren't a lot of aliens in the Power Rangers universe yet. Piggy is definitely one. But Cosmic Fury does potentially present the opportunity to revisit that concept, to revisit that world, so to speak. What, if anything, what do you think, is possible we could or should that you want to see revisited about SPD if this is truly it for the continuity as we know it?
So on my end, I definitely do want them to keep SPD as part of the mainline continuity. They've got a few different alternate universes that they've established, are RPMs and alternate universe dino charges. I'd like to see SPD stay as part of the mainline universe, which would mean then Power Rangers, they're going to need to, at the very least, explain why one city has a lot of aliens living in it on Earth. Maybe they could just say that's a specific to New Tech City, and the rest of Earth is not like that. That it's a kind of just a one city type thing.
Kind of like a Men in Black port of entry sort of thing.
Yeah, or like the non-bond trade ports from medieval Japanese history, which obviously they don't want to reference that directly,
Right, yeah.
because you don't understand 16th century Japanese history. But
I mean I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't? But yeah, Tori, so what do you want to see about SPD, revisited if possible before, as hinted, the current continuity ends?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not really sure myself how I'd like to see them handle this. I mean, I'm always pretty partial to like the multiple timelines kind of thing, like this just being one of many potential futures. And since like the end of the continuity is kind of coming up here, yeah, I'd really like to let them still have this as their like have this kind of be where the Power Rangers are headed, or like that's our immediate future. Um, if nothing else, I would absolutely take just some kind of throwaway line about how we like changed the year numbering system over the next couple years. So
Well, it's like, before the show, it was kind of like not clear whether it would take place in 2025 or 2125. But the old regime, like Melissa Flores and Jason Bischoff, kind of had 2025 marked in the calendars. They just never got to stick around to oversee how that's handled. But yeah, hopefully, we see some kind of reference. Obviously, the prosthetics and all that aren't around. John Toohey is working in the States, so I'm not sure, how much really could be done. But that doesn't mean you can't, put Kelson Henderson in a jumpsuit and have the Rangers run into Boom or something. Anything's possible. All right, so we are going to be ready for whatever comes out of Hasbro PulseCon next week. We're also going to be talking in our next episode about the first batch of the backstretch of Dino Fury, as well as issue 100. There's going to be a lot to get into, and we can't wait to get into it with you. All right, until next time, everybody.
see you.
a good one.
For more, find us at Rangercast.net or in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to review us in Apple Podcasts and leave your feedback for us on Facebook, Twitter, or through our website's voicemail. The opening theme is by Daniel Park. The ending theme is by me. Rangercast is distributed under Creative Commons. Share it, don't sell it. Abba, 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 ninja.